The least used commuter rail line in Chicago is a line that runs from Chicago Union Station to Joliet, Illinois, Metra's Heritage Corridor. Hello from the least used doorway in Union Station. Today we are taking a trip from Chicago to Joliet, not aboard Amtrak, aboard Metra. This is one of the hardest trains for me to get to ride. There are only 3 outbound and 3 inbound trains a day. The inbound trains obviously for rush hour in the morning and the outbound trains for the evening. And I find myself with nothing better to do in Chicago in the late afternoon. So we are today going to ride Metra's Heritage Corridor to Joliet. We're not going to be able to make it back the same way we came. So once we get to Joliet, we're going to connect to the Rock Island District and ride that all the way back to LaSalle Street Station. That's better than eating dinner at a normal time. Later today, I'm going to Cleveland. Well, that'll be tomorrow I arrive there, on the Lakeshore Limited, which I've already got a video out about. I hope I get some sleep. A pigeon in a train station is awkward, similarly to that of a public transit tourist looking to take the rush hour only Heritage Corridor service. It's just before 3:30 p.m. and I'm headed to the last track on the South Concourse tracks. Look both ways. Okay. We're far out in the boonies for this one. Ooh! It's the filler train! Unlike Amtrak, where you're corralled into a waiting area prior to boarding, Metra platforms are open for passengers to head to their train once the track has been posted on station monitors. Historically, the line was initially operated by the Alton Railroad. The Heritage Corridor saw many first runs of various types of historic Pullman cars, but we ride today in the classic Metra bi-level gallery cars, though our coach today has had its green windows replaced with clear ones at some point in its life. The Amtrak train next to us appears to be the outbound Illini train bound for Carbondale that includes extra superliner sleepers, cafes, and lounge cars in its consists to serve as axle count cars on the former Illinois Central Main Line, now owned by Canadian National, the company that also owns the tracks as far as Joliet on the Heritage Corridor. The Heritage Corridor has the fewest trips, 3 in each direction, the fewest station stops at 7, and offers only inbound Metra service from Joliet to Chicago during weekday mornings and outbound service back to the suburb on weekday afternoons. It really serves as a shortcut service to Joliet, an alternative to the Rock Island District, which runs from LaSalle Street Station more frequently throughout the day and across the whole week. The Heritage Corridor operates on the same line as Amtrak's Lincoln service trains to downstate cities in Illinois, St. Louis, and Kansas City, as well as the Texas Eagle to Dallas, San Antonio, and the thrice-weekly extension to Los Angeles. On weekdays, there are actually 2 more Amtrak trains on the line than there are Metra trains. But Amtrak only makes station stops in Summit and Joliet, bypassing smaller suburban stations along the way.
Riders traveling westbound fare zones must purchase a new ticket for the correct zone. Thank you.
The Alton Railroad operated only a handful of daily round trips to Joliet as commuter services in line with inner-city trains, though for the most part these services weren't much more numerous than the services provided today by Metra and Amtrak. The Gulf, Mobile, and Ohio Railroad operated the line after the Alton folded, and the Illinois Central added the line to its system briefly in the 1970s after the GMO, prior to the formation of Metra. Amtrak in the 1970s would take on the services to the state capital of Springfield and beyond to St. Louis. Aside from the line receiving its current name in the 1980s, various station closures, remodels, and the opening of 2 new stations on the line, the service is quite similar today to how it ran historically. And for such a lightly ridden line, it has a lot of history. The route of the Heritage Corridor runs mostly alongside the Illinois and Michigan Canal Heritage Corridor, a National Historic Landmark. The canal was a route for goods and people to travel between Chicago and the Mississippi River in the mid-19th century, before the advent of the locomotive. Later in the 20th century, the canal would be widened and its infrastructure upgraded with the completion of the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal as part of the Greater Illinois Waterway Project to modernize river traffic across the state. The experience learned from this would send engineers eventually to the Panama Canal to work on that project. The linking of the Mississippi with the Great Lakes and eventually the St. Lawrence Seaway turned the early villages along the route in Illinois into cities and solidified Chicago's place as a center for trade and transport in North America. When railroads began to be established, the Alton and Chicago Railroad would be formed by the 1850s alongside the canal, serving to advance the industrialization of the region. If you're like me, you might be surprised to learn about how the towns along this line made history for themselves as a result of these transport connections. Much like cities along the more frequent Metra, BNSF, and Union Pacific lines to the north, heavy industries were historic powerhouses that drew in significant regional population growth and haven't seen their populations decline overall greatly in the years since the canal and railroads were established. Our destination of Joliet, as of 2020, was only some 30,000 residents behind Illinois' second largest city of Aurora. The placement of the Heritage Corridor through these industrial sites and rail yards, along with the added intercity traffic on Amtrak's Lincoln service, means that Metra's not really in a good position to seek out additional service on the line, being that it also shares it with quite a bit of freight here on the south side. Like I said in the beginning, Joliet and the South Chicagoland is also served throughout the day by Metra's Rock Island district, with connections to many suburban bus corridors, as well as South Chicago neighborhoods. There's also the third least-ridden Metra line, the Southwest service, nearby, that also offers rush-hour train service for the region. A commuter rail service with a limited rush-hour-only timetable typically suggests a lack of presence or demand, but in the case of the Heritage Corridor, it's really just filling gaps as best as the agency can. The towns along the line have not seen ridership recover to even half of pre-2020 levels. But considering the ridership has alternative service nearby, that kind of performance is better than many North American cities whose economies are based in heavy industrial jobs are at public transit. Undoubtedly, the work-from-home movement has taken away a number of public transit riders that would have previously needed to head downtown on weekdays. But Joliet is holding its own as a population center, with surprising growth over recent decades. I had previously taken Lincoln service trains and the Texas Eagle through these landscapes, knowing these suburban stations were here, but also seeing the natural landscape of the area adjacent to the waterway conflicting my view of how this region actually is comprised demographically. Not only have heavy industrial job sites like refineries along the line and the Argonne National Laboratory, where the nuclear reactors for the Manhattan Project preceded the environmental studies that now take place there today, towns like Summit, Willow Springs, and Lamont were historic centers for immigrant populations to settle within Chicagoland and remain so today. Romeoville is a station opened within the last 10 years, around several other large suburbs just on the other bank of the river. Plenty of folks got off the train here today, so the line appears to be working its way into a lot of folks' commutes, even when it's placed into a new community. The city of Joliet is cited by Wikipedia as having a third of its population having Hispanic heritage, and that population continues to grow. There's a lot of people out here in the south suburbs to be taken places by various modes of transit, aside from the railroad. The historic automobile routes of the Lincoln Highway and Route 66 are around. Even with this line only having rush hour service, it's something that runs between these cities to add to the weekday commutes of those that might work in one city but live in an adjacent suburb. Cities like Lockport are laid amongst a patchwork of smaller but still significant population centers of suburban growth in Chicagoland throughout the latter half of the 20th century, and are still seeing demand grow for housing more affordable than what's further in Chicago around the Loop. With Pace bus service and the adjacent Rock Island and BNSF Metra services within driving distance, there's quite a bit of connections throughout the region that can be made, on weekdays of course mostly. Joliet is the oddly stalwart, cornerstone larger city, sitting on the southern gateway of Chicagoland that we approach on our outbound trip today. It remains today an anchor city where a lot of people come to do their business rather than go all the way into Chicago. I won't be able to ride a train back downtown on this line today, unless I would have the time to wait for a Lincoln service train due in around 10 p.m. from its downstate run. Since that won't work for my plans to pick up Amtrak's Lakeshore Limited tonight to head to Cleveland back out of Union Station, where we started this trip, I'll need to make a transfer at Joliet from the platform shared by the Heritage Corridor and Amtrak to Metra's Rock Island District, which lies to the east on track which intersects the Heritage Corridor at Joliet as it turns from Canadian National to Union Pacific trackage. The station at Joliet Gateway Center is a recent build to reinvigorate downtown Joliet after the adjacent Joliet Union Station was closed nearly a decade ago. That building, opened in 1912, was once able to compete with its Chicago namesake for intercity travelers, but fell off toward the latter half of the 20th century as its large interior waiting area became victim to the austere drop-ceiling-laden presence of Amtrak's architecture planning as it attempted to modernize or straight-out abandon its historic artifact stations. The new space shared with Metra is an improvement, with the historic station and switching tower being held over for the local railroad museum's hopeful future expansion. Maybe I'll get to go there someday too. I just know with my luck that museum is closed now. As for my ride back downtown, I'll be taking you along on that, my first complete end-to-end ride on the equally historic Rock Island District, in a future video, green-tinted window views and all. More from Chicago, Cleveland, and beyond in videos to come. Thanks for watching this one today and coming along with me. Give a like, share, subscribe to see where I go next. I'll see you on the next one.